All right. So we are live here today with Jonathan and Renee Harris. And I am very excited that you guys agreed to come and present about how to parent their passion. And I think this is a really important topic for this day and age because we have so many kids who have all these passions, and we, as parents, we want our kids to follow their dreams, but at the same time, we want them to be responsible, contributing adults when they grow up.
Right.
And so, welcome to our group. And I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you guys run with it.
Hi, Molly.
Yay, thanks for having us. I have to say, Molly and we have close to the same number of kids, right, Molly? How many do you have?
Oh, you beat me. I only have 7.
We have that connection there.
Yeah, you guys have 9, which is awesome.
Yeah, so that's one of the, Jonathan's going to actually take over and show a little presentation, and that's a little bit of that is you'll get to meet our kids in the presentation. So just to kind of see what they're doing now and a little bit of the why of how and why we decided to kind of homeschool differently. And yeah, so.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to know, Molly, for your group, like when the hero concept, can you tell me a little bit more about that? And how in your group are people viewing the whole hero concept as applied to their teens, let's say, in their mind?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So what I do is I base the way we homeschool and how I present, how we should help guide our kids, all based on the hero's journey. And the concept here is that often we're preparing the path for our children instead of preparing them for their own path. And I think often, there are some good paths to take, but sometimes we just put our kids in a box and say, this is what you have to do. I don't care if you want to do it or not. And so then it causes a lot of power struggles that way. And so what I just love to teach is let's prepare our kids to go on this path that's not easy because it comes with its challenges, but it's full of growth and personal transformation. And it's really the cycle or the pattern for learning and education. And so that's what we're hopefully doing here with our teenagers, especially because they want more control in their life. They don't want mom telling them to do everything. And it's hard to know sometimes, though, because as parents, we have certain directions we want them to go. But then as kids, they don't even know all the things. And so it's really good when we can sit down and work together with our teenagers to help prepare them for the path, and guide them on the path, but allow them some of that autonomy too.
It reminds me of one of those preteen books. You choose your
own adventure.
Choose your own adventure, and that sounds like what they don't want to read the same book that their older sibling has gone through. They already know the story. They want to choose their own adventure to decide whether to jump that cliff or to dig down in the tunnel, right? So that's what they want. They want their own, their own hero journey, and you're there to help them navigate those decisions. So I love that concept. It's totally in line with that idea of your child taking more ownership and you as a parent being kind of like more like a coach. So you're not disconnected from it, but you're actually helping them to go faster down that path of adventure that's truly their own, which is what you want in the end. You want them to be excited about it. So
yeah.
All right. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you the strategy we use for our kids. And I called it, I'm going to put it in presentation mode for everybody to see. So just one moment, share screen. And we discovered earlier with Molly that if you're viewing this from Zoom, you should be able to control how much you see of us talking versus the screen. So if you like to have big text in front of you, you can modify that. If you don't want to see text like I am sometimes, I just want to see people talking. You can resize that to your comfort level. So you control it, not us. And I have the chat box open, so I might ask a few questions. If I could have you jump in if you're there and you're willing to share some stuff, that'd be fun to make it more exciting. So I call this from
And-
passion. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add too, you can totally comment on the Facebook page.
Oh, thank
Oh,
you.
right.
I forgot
Yeah.
about that.
And I'll be
Yeah, so-
watching that. I'll watch that as well too on my phone. So I've got it right here.
This is great.
Yeah.
So I call this from passion to profit. And really this is the equivalent of the hero journey for your team that we're talking about. So by passion, I think this, I mean this in the standard meaning, both adult and children. When you said they have a passion for something, that means they're super enthusiastic about it. They want to get up in the morning, they want to stay up late, they want to talk about it. That's what we're talking about. And then profit, exactly what that means. You ideally want to be rewarded for your love of this thing in life that you have with some cash. Isn't that the ideal? I mean, everybody thinks like, oh, I'd love to surf for a living, right? So you got a passion, but how do you
But
support
nowadays
yourself?
it's kids. Oh, I want to be a YouTuber like that guy.
Yeah, I want to be a YouTuber like that, right? So you have this passion, and then to cross over to that profit, that's where us as adults, we're worried about, okay, you're spending a lot of time in your passion, but this is coming to an awful crash as soon as you leave the home, because reality is going to hit. You're gonna have to pay for that old car that's broken down, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're trying to find that hero's journey with our kids. It's like, how can you be unique, beautiful, passionate about life, and still support yourself? I mean, that's kind of the ideal in our minds. Not everything can always be achieved, but with a strategy, you could actually get very, very close to that, and at least get them out of the house where they're actually supporting themselves with their passion. Because I don't mention this later on yet, but I want to do it now, is that a lot of times, if your kids are growing up in a good family, the parents are doing a good job as far as giving them space to develop. One of the problems is that if they don't have enough liftoff with whatever passion that they have or talent, when they get out into the real world, they start panicking because they can't support themselves. So if they could just get enough to pay for maybe a room with other roommates, they can continue building and not lose that momentum, not give that up, put food on the table, and then they could really, so you need that critical mass to lift off. So that's kind of a little bit what we're going to talk about here. Okay, so is it possible for your child's hobby or small passion, the small P, I put a capital P, but really should be a small passion or interest, to turn him into hero? Yes, it is possible to do that. And I'd like to make a little bit of a qualification. When you say, hey, somebody's a hero, you're actually saying that they're not just playing the piano, that they're not just playing on the soccer team. A hero is to the next level. They're doing something where the team is excited by them. Your child who's playing the piano is actually moving to tears a whole VA service of some person who's passed away that everybody loves. And so we're talking about using skills at the next level of impact, right? So it's not just a hobby, we're talking about the next level of impact. So here are some group questions. I like to compare our childhood activities with the opportunities that your kids have today, opportunities in general. If you could.
You mean are as adults?
Oh, as adults, right.
When we were children.
We were kids once.
We were kids.
Yeah, we were kids once. And my initial impression is that our opportunities as kids were far less numerous than they are for our own children today. And so that's one thing that I would like to know. Hi, Alice. What kind of opportunities do your kids have that you did not have? As to whether or not they take advantage of it's a different story. And I'm putting pressure probably on Alice, and she's the only one in the Zoom
Or
part.
Molly.
Or Molly. Molly, you're free to, you can type in there too. So a lot of things that we have, and we deal with this too. A lot of parents deal with too many options on the table. So a lot of times, if the only martial arts club in town is the karate club, right? Everybody's probably watched
Karate Kid.
yeah, what's the new series?
Oh, Cobra Kai.
Cobra Kai, right? It's a flashback for the parents in the 80s, kind of a simpler time when you only had one opportunity. Well, the problem is now there's 10 dojos, taekwondo, jujitsu. There's so many different types of gymnastic clubs. So what you have is so many opportunities but you don't know where to focus. So one of the struggles that we have with our kids is that they don't really get good and in depth. They can't ever really get to that hero level because they're never really that good at anything. And that's because of the tremendous amount of opportunities, which on the face of it is a good thing as long as you can stick with something. So what kind of, Molly, remind me, how old are your children right now? They're still in your house, that are teens.
Still in my house that are teens. I have a 13 and a 16-year-old.
All right.
And a 19-year-old who's in and out of the house.
Okay. They're still a teen, right? Okay. One
Yeah.
more. Still a teen.
Yeah.
So like some of the kind of hobbies that you notice either in your kids or in your social circles around you, what's the typical thing that people are into?
Typically, kids are very into video gaming. And in the homeschool world, we probably have a little more into like reading and history, that sort of thing. For my kids, one of mine is a huge reader. One of mine is very into sports. And another one of mine is she likes to read too. And she actually really likes to nurse, do nursing. Yeah.
How old is she, by the way?
The 19-year-old.
Oh, she's the older one. Okay.
Okay. She's in a program right now, or she's doing some kind of internship. Okay. All right. So, and that's getting more of like into a trade. You're starting to hone your skills in the marketplace. That's great. So what we have here is a lot of these skills and hobbies. People are at various levels of proficiency. One thing we do have that was not available to us as kid, and at least where we are in California, it used to be, I think it still is, but where they have, I think in junior high, there's a certain time period where they all have to study the missions, California missions, and every
like fourth grade, I think.
Yeah, and the reason we kind of discovered that is because whenever we used to go to the library, now everything's online, but when we used to go to the library and we'd come to a section, the whole section would be gone because every single school in California is doing this at the exact same time, lockstep, right? So they really, and then I think they had more books and resources on that, but on other topics there wasn't that much. So what's happened since our time as kids to now is that during that same time, let's say all that information on early California history for our state, you'd be the equivalent in other states. Now there's in-depth information on numerous topics, right? So if I had a kid who was into dance, I could probably go during that time period and probably five to 10 books, maybe written for a university level, maybe for a specialty, all about the history of dance and how it was used during the early California time. So that's a little bit of the difference. We have a lot more specific information related to interests that your kids may actually have. So instead of everybody doing California mission history, now you could go into architecture at that same time period. You could go into science. You could go into any number of directions. And that's one of the beauties of our time, is that we have actual access to real information on that. But here is the key sobering question. Who is the hero? Molly, I want to use that word hero since I'm in your group. Who is the hero in the world of your child's interest right now? Okay, it's not your kid. I'm almost betting it's not your kid. Is it the teacher? It could very well be. I know, especially in the music world, when people are taking piano lessons, it's always Mrs. So-and-so, or somebody who's really famous that you're trying to, they're the hero. And in fact, wherever they go, and if you're having a recital, you follow them. They're the hero. Everybody talks highly of them. Or is it the coach? Again, if your kid is probably playing football and so forth, the coach or the program you're with, that's the hero, not your child. No one's really talking about your child, the hero. So why isn't it your child? Why isn't your child the hero in his world of interest? And I've already answered that question, so I'm going to go to the next one. Before I answer that completely, have you ever seen, for those of you listening, I want you to take a moment in your mind to think of actual teens. Maybe they're close to your family, maybe they're not, what you'd say, wow, that kid would definitely, I would call that child a hero in the group sense here. Of course, I'm not talking about rescuing people from burning cars, but in that world of interest, that kid is a hero. That teen is a hero. Can you recognize that when you see it in other teenagers, or have you ever even seen it? So take a moment to think about that, because I think you're going to see that it has a particular characteristic. It's not just that they're skilled at what they do, is they're going to be actually delivering value to others. So, and that's why when I use that example of the TV version of rescuing someone from a burning car, it's because they're actually bringing value to, in that case, a trapped person. They're actually saving their life, right? So it's not about them being able to open a car or jump into a car. Like, what's the old show that you used to watch as a kid? And from the 70s and 80s, you always jump in through the window.
Dukes of Hazzard.
Dukes
Is
of
that
Hazzard.
what you're
You're not supposed
thinking
to
of?
watch that, kids. Anyways, you know, that's about them. They're skilled, they're cool, they're whatever, but they're not really bringing value to other people. So that's really a definition of a heroic act, is you're actually bringing value to others to serve them in a very specific way. So you got to ask yourself, so when your kid is playing excellent music, or your child is doing great at a particular sport, are they bringing value to others?
It's a little bit
Or-
entertainment.
Or
bit
is
of
it a little bit of entertainment, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of times people who are participating are sort of there by social obligation, because a lot of times the neighbors don't want to come. So the definition there of a heroic act with a talent or skill that you have is you're actually going to be using that to bring value to others or serve them if you're younger without cash. And it has to be done with a high level of skill, a high level of energy, right? We talked about that way in the beginning, enthusiasm. That's why we use the word passion. It implies that. It has to be in the place of need of other people. Okay, so let's go back to the ubiquitous piano girl. A lot of times she's not bringing her music to the place of need of others, right? They're coming to her on their schedule, right? She's not taking it to them. So that's the difference again. So people are serving her, coming to listen to her, to encourage her, but not the other way
You're
around.
talking about someone who's in the middle of developing that.
Developing
talent.
a
This is not a paid thing.
Yeah,
where
so she's not at a heroic act level,
No.
right, yet. And in a way that genuinely helps. So moms and dads, you got to stay away. One of the tips, we'll get into that a little bit later, is don't create fake service opportunities for your kids to develop their talent, because it is not helpful to them, right? We all kind of laugh about that when you have a kid who's 8 or 7, they're drawing pictures. It's like, oh, that's so sweet. You're doing your best, right? You can sell them, right? Thankfully, I usually stop that when there's 13 or 14, because you're thinking they better actually not believe they're going to be able to make a living selling this junk. They're going to have to up their skill level. They're going to have to draw the stuff that the other person really needs, not what they want, right? So this is what happens when you want to go to a heroic level. You got to think about other people using the skill or talent that your child has. Once you start doing that, right? Let's go back to the girl. Everybody has that vision of the girl playing great piano. Can she take her music to the place of need of others? Then you're thinking, well, she's got a big piano. How's she going to transport that? Good question. Is it on their schedule? Well, it's only from 4 to 5 because that's the time slot that we have available. Okay, apparently it's not on the schedule of the people who need it. And is it in a way that genuinely helps them? Well, she wants to play hit songs from the 80s because their parents are enthusiastic like we are about the 80s song. But really the person that's needing to be honored is from the late 60s. Is that music that your child is going to choose be matched to the needs that they have, the emotional needs? Those are all great questions. If you can answer, yes, my child is doing all of those things, then they're actually a hero in that world. And chances are your friends and your relatives and your neighbors are like, wow, your daughter is really good. They like enthusiasm, right? She's not just passing the test. So, but here's the thing. We have discovered that a skill, a hobby, or a personal passion by itself is just not strong enough to serve other people. Just because your child is good at something or passionate about it, like your son, your 12-year-old son is all about World War II tanks and has a whole, knows all the YouTube channels and has a bunch of books that he got from his grandpa, and he knows a lot about the history. That's a true personal passion. It's kind of like an academic interest, but it's not strong enough. That level of intellectual understanding or joy about personal joy is not strong enough to serve other people. It just isn't. So, but there is a strategy that you can use to transform your child's hobby into a long-term talent. And here I use the word talent in the grown-up sense of the word. So just like when we say, hey, this person is a talented accountant, right? We don't say that usually in the kids' world, but that's really what I mean. It's like this person is not only doing the job with technical excellence, but they're going beyond that, trying to understand the needs of the people they're serving. And they're doing it at a high level of skill. So they're both at the same time. And if you're able to turn a child who has somewhat of a hero, let's say your child is doing hero type work now with the people around them, if they do this consistently enough with a little more strategy, they can actually turn it into a profit making. This is where we mentioned earlier, by the time they're 18, instead of having to work at a fast food place, they could probably pay enough of a rent to be with roommates and continue that passion into a real career. So earlier we were mentioning, Renee, do you want to mention that? Our 9 kids, some of the interests
I need to
that they've
remember
had.
all 9. Okay.
Because our kids are all
Yeah.
different. They're all different.
Yeah, that's one thing that we learned early on, is that you can pull out the differences, the interests, the kids. You know that when you have children that they're different, that even if they're twins, we have a set of twins and they are like night and day. So our oldest is Jonathan Jr. and he's 24 now. He started out with an interest in just plain regular photography, and then it moved into some guitar, and you might go, actually you are going to feature him.
Yeah, I'm going to feature him later on.
I won't
give
go
more
into
detail.
too much, but he went from just a simple interest in the photography and doing some videos, making videos with the kids in the neighborhood, to now he's actually a manager of drone videographers in that area. And then our second born, he started out, we had like a local gem and mineral show that we would go to every year. The kids enjoyed looking at all the rocks and the jewelry. And so this one, our second born, had a particular interest in rocks. And so he ended up, we would get like a rock grinder. Is that what they're called? Rock.
Well, we joined a club actually that had
that's
all the
right.
equipment.
There's a whole process here. We can go on and on. But anyway, he went from interest in rocks, and we had someone who taught him how to make jewelry out of some of the rocks and some of the gems that he was creating. And then he got into metal smithing, and he became a bladesmith, and we let him have a forge in our garage. And he learned from other people. And then he became a knife maker, but he had a whole portfolio that showed what he was producing. And that opened up doors for him to get his first job. And then that opened up doors for him to have a side business, which he's developing that while he's working his job. And then our third born is a gamer coder. In our business, he is the guy I talk to at least once a week. And Nicholas, I need you to help me with this. And he can just troubleshoot, figure things out, install apps on where.
Well, he doesn't work for us, but she still has his phone number.
He's my 911 on tech stuff, so he knows. And thankfully, he has a younger brother in our house who's 14, who's becoming to do a lot. He's interested in a lot of the same things. So now I can go to my 14-year-old. He's developed enough that he can help me out. And then he has a twin sister who is an artist. She's just done amazing art, and she's been able to do some commissions with her artwork. And then we have, let's see, I'm looking at your list here. I'm glad you wrote it down. And then Gideon is our efficiency expert. And that was someone, he was into CNC machines, and he did get a side job where he was an employee for a while for somebody else when he was 17, I think, and decided, I don't want to be an employee, but I'm going to start my own business. And ironically, it was not in machinery at all. He was also helping us with our business, but he is Mr. Streamline. I mean, he wants to have everything super efficient. So when I had him do some of our business packaging and so on, I said, Mom, it would be a lot easier if he would just put this on the shelf like this. And so he created things out of his 3D printer. Yeah. And created a lot of more efficient things for us to use. And then he did that with apps, and now he does that full time. So he's created a whole business out of helping other business owners not with their physical products per se, but managing teams
The
and so on.
workflow,
Oh, yeah.
He's an efficiency expert.
And then we also have a podcast editor who is 16 and he edits. He's been doing that since he was 11, right?
Yep.
11 or 12. He's got like over 700 episodes that he's edited for people. And he's also loves videography. And then the
And right
next-
now he's actually at an intensive choir camp.
He also has a very strong interest in voice, and he started with voice acting. So we've kind of kept those interests going with some of the other things, including choir camp. But he also likes to do the video editing. So, and then we don't have him on here because he's still young. But then our 14-year-old is the one who is kind of following a little bit with the computer
I was
stuff.
about to say he was 13, but I guess he's 14
No, he's
already.
14. Yeah, so it's nice to see when they develop these things over time.
Yeah, so what the whole point of this, to make the point here, why I'm bringing this up is because it has nothing to do when you have a strategy. It's not like, okay, my kid's an extrovert and my next one's an introvert. It will work for this one or not. That's not the point. What you're trying to do is coming up with a strategy where you can systematically turn each of your children who has a completely different personality, different interests, into a hero. So there is a playbook. Yesterday we said, what do you call this? It's a playbook. It's a playbook because it's like a formula as far as how you're going to encourage them to go down a road, right? So even though we talked about the choose your own adventure, the book still has a physical format. You get to a juncture, you make some decisions. So even though each child is unique, there is a format to going about that. So in a nutshell, here's the secret sauce. So you choose an existing interest. Then what you do is you take a look around you in your family, in your social circles. If they're on the younger side, like 13, your social circle is going to be, smaller than, let's say, a 16 or a 17-year-old. Totally makes sense. So you're going to look for a tool or a mini skill that they can tap into without paying that much extra money, right? So you're looking within your social context and say, can I add a tool to this child's interest so that it starts coming alive? I was on a coaching call with some teens, and we were talking about why the importance of finding a tool with an interest, because they're kind of stuck. So and these were young teen boys, and I knew if I talked about food, I'd connect with them. So I said, what do you like? It's like, oh, I'm really into beef stew, something like my mom makes the most amazing thing. So they, I woke them up there. And I said, well, if you had a love for this, obviously you're enjoying it. You love it. You could talk about it ad infinitum, but are you bringing value to other people? No, you're consuming it. You're enjoying it. Fair enough, but you're not a hero to other people with your soup interest, right? So, but if I said, hey, let's get you an Instapot. Everybody's got Instapot. They all raise their hand. Yeah, my mom has an Instapot. We've got two. And then right away, you're like, well, of course, the reason why I would have an Instapot is because I could transport this probably and take it to parties. I could make big amounts. I could control the quality instead of me just doing one little thing by the pot. So all of a sudden, even though you have no interest in the Instapot itself, you realize this tool could open up the doors to creating something for other people. And this is often what's missing, right? Now, it could be as simple as, if you have the piano girl example, you may have to be realistic and say, you know what? If I have a regular piano, it's great, but people have to come to me. Right? I'm not famous. People are not going to follow me. So you might have to get something digital so you can transport it. You might have to get speakers, et cetera, et cetera. As soon as you talk about a tool, no matter what that interest is, all of a sudden the potential for it to come alive, to bring concrete value to other people is now possible. But that's not the end of the story, because sometimes people will get tools, but it's not realistic, because you, even as a parent, don't know how exactly it's going to bring interest. So what you need to do, especially at a young age, is you need to practice bringing value to a specific group of people. They don't have to be, they can be multiple individuals. It could be a social club of some kind, where you're saying, I'm going to practice bringing real value. So not a bunch of friends of your grandma, we're all going to say you're great. You want people who are going to say, I'm not going to come because it's too stupid, or I'm not going to come because it's at a really dumb time for us to come. You want to practice on a group of people that are going to give you genuine feedback. They may not give you verbal, but they will give you feedback by saying, you know what, we want you to come back, or we want you, we want to tip you, which would be amazing. So so a lot of times when you're young, like we had a daughter who was very artistic, And she didn't read till she was about 10 or 12. We tried all her brothers, younger brothers would pass her up and read, and we tried, I don't know how many methods. And so one of the things that was important for us as parents is like, okay, we didn't want her to be defined only by her lack of ability in specific areas. So we said, we need to get her through history, get her through these other subject materials by having her draw and illustrate. And we noticed that this child at that time had a very unusual way to draw. She looked at the word very visually. When she'd start drawing people, she always started with their hair. I'm like, who starts with hair? That's the most complicated thing to do with no lessons. But that's the kind of person was. So we said, you know what? I'm going to go to the library. I'm going to get a bunch of stuff on American colonial stuff. And I told her, just draw your way through this thing. There's a lot of visual information. The way we started for her is we had her started doing for our business. We had her do some logos for, not logos, it was, excuse me, it was some stamps for some of our products that were very cartoonish that fit our brand. So that was an example of how we started in a very, very small way, using her to bring real value to us. And my wife, who's in control of that, would not accept it because this is going out to our customers unless it's up to a certain standard. And this was an important training wheel for her. And you can find this in your environment. So what step 4 I have here is repeat. So what you want to do is have your child find a situation that's repeatable where they can exercise their talent. So you don't want something that only happens once a year or once every few months. You want something that happens ideally at least once a week, where they're able to bring information to people. Because one of the keys to going from hero to profit, right? So hero, they can do hero if you're on top of it, but to get to profit, you have to repeat it on a regular basis, because that's going to give them that live feedback as to what they need to do in order to modify it or add another little skill or tool. How are we doing on time, Molly, here? Okay.
We're doing great. We're doing great.
Okay, so small heroic acts of excellence, like one-offs, are fantastic, but you need to do it on a regular basis. So you need to look at opportunities where you can repeat it. And that helps you narrow down as a parent in saying, hey, we're not going to wait for the summer vacation in order for you to do your thing. We're going to look for something that's more regular basis, and that'll help you narrow down the opportunities in your environment for your child as a coach. You're coaching your child. Hey, I love the way that you're making music, but let's not wait for that once a year get together. Let's look for something every week. And then at that point that says, oh, I need to look at maybe particular clubs or groups where this is happening. Okay, I'm going to give you an example of my son, Jonathan, same name as me. And his, because his thing is so visual, people can see that. We have a son who's a programmer, but whenever I try to take pictures of what he's doing, it's like, it's boring. It's like, it's a bunch of stuff on his screen.
HTML code.
And he's really big into it, and he's got a mind for it, but it's not very visual. I'm going to use my son. So here he is in the middle. I took a picture of him at graduation. He's 24 now. So he was 18 or 17.
18 or 17.
Yeah, 18 or 17. So when we first started off, we got a hand-me-down digital camera from an aunt. Okay, and that's often how it starts. Some relative, a friend has access to a tool, and they gave it to him. And it wasn't, it was advanced enough to do some fun stuff. So here you see him. He's right there in the middle. You probably can't see in the details, but he has kind of a smug smile on his face, and he has he's got siblings and neighborhood kids. This is the neighborhood gang. You can tell it's summer. This is why half of them are in their swim trunks, and they're all watching the screen, because with this digital camera, he quickly discovered he could put together little mini stories involving the kids of the neighborhood. And it had the typical thing of them looking like they're being run over by the car with some special effects. He's having a good time. And then we decided as parents, you know what? I'm glad you have an interest. And but could you bring some value to other people with this? So we had a need. We have product shots that we need made of our products, and ours were not very good. We couldn't afford a real photographer. And he said, yeah, I like that challenge. I think we may have given him a little bit of cash or something.
Usually when you do this, when you find that opportunity, you can pay them in cash if you have it. You can pay them in computer time. So sometimes it's just, as parents, just get creative in how you reward them.
Yeah. And so here he's at the camera shop getting some lessons. He went to pick up some cheap lights. And while he was there, he asked him, can you give me some tips on how to take product shots? And the guy did. I think in this case, he's actually getting a tripod or something. So from there, he started becoming much more aware of the need to use photography and videography for the needs of others. And he started with our little home business doing this. Later on, he discovered, again, and a friend who gave him an old hand-me-down drone, that if he Velcroed his camera, which is very risky, way back on it, he could actually take aerial videos of the houses and the stuff. And there was a real estate agent who was in charge of a rental. And he said, hey, could I do this for you? Take some video. And he said, sure. And I think he got paid a token amount. He realized, oh my goodness, I could repeat this and make some real cash, right? So at that point, he's what, 14 maybe?
Something like that.
14. And from there, he discovered, forget rentals, luxury homes, it's where it's at because they pay way more money. Then he upgraded to a drone that actually had a gimbal, which means it stabilizes it. And then he really got into editing the videos, because he's told me that basically 9/10 of the work is actually in the editing, not the visual beautiful part where you're flying the drone. And so he got really good into that and delivering very quickly. He got feedback that he needed these things delivered quickly. They needed to be in a particular format. He learned that when you take videos inside the house, you can't leave the toilet seat up.
Right.
Mom, he's a boy, he doesn't know. He got feedback. So next time around, he closes the toilet seats. He picked up tons and tons of real life skills as he's doing this. Down here in the lower left, these are my pictures from my old Instagram feed. He's on the phone, and he found that he got very comfortable talking on the phone to his customers, which are actually, most of them were real estate people. He did some other projects. When can he show up? Where could he be? And he developed the real communication skills. His email writing got very, very, very good. And we discovered at that point, forget the traditional English writing course. Let's get him into communicating with clients. And boy, if you don't communicate clearly, you'll learn very quickly that, oh my goodness, I should have used a subjunctive. They didn't say that instead of the affirmative. You put in the details, super powerful. And then fast forward 24, I asked him yesterday, can you send me a picture of you talking to the team? So he's got the back of his head here. He manages, and I can't say the name of the company, but lots and lots of teams of grown men, a lot of them my age, where he's in charge of hiring and firing them. And here he shows up on site to do some training for them. So he has so much in-depth experience in the field, going across the United States, living kind of his adventurous lifestyle. He loves that. Now he's in charge of men and reports, and that's where it evolved. A simple interest in photography brought value to people, and he kept pivoting, looking for where the money is, and discovered as he's doing this that he had a passion actually for managing people, which he had no idea. But this skill allowed him to open up those doors.
And along the way, he had other interests. So it wasn't just that you don't only focus on that one thing. He had taken guitar lessons. He had a really big interest in coin collections, actually, at one point. And then we used our homeschooling to feed into something like this, so that even their curriculum, and this is what we teach parents how to do too, so that when you choose your curriculum for your children, that has to work for their kids, not you got to finish this book and finish the workbook and then you're done. So it's tying all those pieces together and helping the kids to kind of navigate that.
Okay, in the last scene here, this is the last picture. I threw one here. My son down a little right, this is second born. He's 22. He's actually started his own machining shop, no debt. He's doing 2 jobs at the same time, his regular day job. So he's the one who started off over here, upper left. He started selling genuine Japanese blades, authentically made and everything, with beautiful woodworking, out of the garage as a teen. He got really, really used to delivering on time. There's a whole adventure there. He got on some professional forums. He was the youngest one to be in there. He sweet talked his way in. So that eventually led him to now he's starting his own business, machining shop and buying equipment. Here he is, one of the first days of him starting it. Lower left is my son's Nicholas, thank you. And his is, you can see whenever I take pictures of him, it always looks like this. This is when he's in his teens, and we pushed him into the garage. I think we painted the wall so it wouldn't look so bad, but his equipment was overflowing, right? And
And then he's got 3D.
same thing, he
Um,
started delivering value. So that was one of our threats. He was doing too much gaming. He's like, hey, if you're going to continue gaming, then you're going to have to deliver value. And that translated into coding plugins for these games. And eventually the original interest kind of waned, and he went into full-time programming for business stuff, not gaming. And our daughter, Noelle, here's one of the pieces of artwork that we did for advertising our natural lip balm. So you can see, I don't know if you can see it on the screen there, but she has a particular color, crimson, is it maybe?
That one's French plum.
Oh, French
You
plum,
don't have
I'm
your-
sorry.
You don't have your glasses on.
And so she did that for us. And Molly, that's in a nutshell what we do is we find a small interest, fan it into a value proposition for other people, and then pivot and pivot and pivot until we find a growing financial opportunities.
And this is also why it's important to start early, because if they suddenly started this when they were 17, they don't have time. That's why they end up working at fast food, because they need to make money. They have cars, they have expenses. So we encourage start early, not too early. I mean, we've had people.
We've experimented earlier than that. It really doesn't make that much.
Sometimes it's too early that mom and dad have to be too involved hand holding, and that's a lot of work for the parents. But once they hit that critical age of like 12, the kids are so motivated. This, I know you've got your whole month of motivation, Molly, in your group. This is motivating for kids.
Our biggest issue is like turning off the lights at night, because they have one more
Gotta
thing they want
stop
to
and
do.
go to bed. And tying in the school and education just comes alongside with it perfectly too.
Yes, thank you so much. I love this so much. And I think you didn't even tell what your family business is that all your kids have provided value for.
Yeah, we've got the original business, which kind of triggered everything. When we decided to go full-time, it's hardlotion.com. And that was a business that we started just, as a little homeschooling experiment, a farmer's market booth. But then it turned into an online e-commerce store within a couple of years. And that became a full-time thing for us. But that's also when we realized we can't just rely on our degrees, because we came out of college with degrees and thought that was going to be the path, and that was going to be the passion that we had, and realized like, there's so much more for kids out there. You can definitely use a degree, but there's also other opportunities, and maybe a degree isn't, your kids aren't meant for college, or if they do go that road, it's got to work for them. It's got to push them into the passion career that they want. And so that's hardlotion.com. But I had, my efficiency guy. I've got enough little things in the business for the kids to do based on their interest and passion. And we're not even grooming them to take over the business. If one of them wants to, that'd be great. But that's a different kind of philosophy than in the past when parents are grooming their kids to take over the business. This is different. We want them to explore their own passions and do their own thing.
Their own hero's journey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's exactly what, yep.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you say you make the distinction here too between being a producer and a consumer. Because in our day and age, sometimes it really is all about do what you love. Okay, well, that's nice, but where's the value? How
Right.
is this helping others? Because that really is the end goal of a hero's journey, is to help and serve others.
Yep.
And I love that you created this whole process in your home to make that happen. Let's see, what did you say? I wrote this down. Yeah, you said, I'm so glad that you have an interest. How could you provide more value?
Really, I mean, the kids could just go forever and, pursue their own thing. And it's going to just it'll be the next, season of baseball, or it'll be the next sport, which is fine, but you can do so much more than that. And sometimes the kids have extra talents and interests that can still feed that interest, but maybe pull it in a slightly different direction that's going to bring value to people.
Oh, and another thing that I love that you said too, I don't know if you said it in this context here, but you've said this to me before too. It's like, we are a family, and one of the places we need to provide value is to our own families as well. And so sometimes in our busy lives, we get so sucked into trying to help our kids develop their interests that we're always running, spending tons of money. And yet, where's it all leading? I remember one of my daughters was taking gymnastics, and she was really good, and she was in it like 5 days a week. And so taking so much time and money. And I started questioning, like, where's this all going?
Mhm.
And I asked the coach, and they said, well, you can get a college scholarship. And I said, I could pay for college twice with what we're spending on gymnastics. And, and at
So the
what
coach was
cost?
the hero.
Yeah, the coach got the value out of it.
The coach got
Yeah.
the value out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we did have her teaching some little gymnastic classes to the kids in the neighborhood, which did help provide some value and help her see, develop some skills and stuff too. But I think it's good. And I'm not saying that, we shouldn't do gymnastics or follow those things, but it's what you're saying is we need to take a look at it and see if it can provide value.
Yeah. And even with that, if she ended up that she really was into science, I mean, maybe it's a lot about just developing the body and so on. Maybe it's about she had a side interest of art. And then we had like our daughter, who's the artist now, she loved horse riding. So she wanted to, we couldn't just buy her a horse. We knew all the expenses around that. But she did take training, and she found a neighbor who had a horse, and the neighbor really wanted the horse to be trained. So she did all of that. And then when it came down to biology anatomy with her in homeschool, we said, you know what, we'll let you start with horse anatomy. She was already interested, so she would love it. If we started with people anatomy, she'd be kind of but having something that she was already interested in, and then she would develop that.
Well, and I
it
should
came out
say,
in her drawing
because she had such a passion for horses, that's where a lot of her drawing in the beginning,
Yeah.
she was trying to get good at. So eventually she stopped drawing she might still do that occasionally, but in the beginning, the horses, she was so intent on getting it right. That's what helped drive her desire to be excellent in her illustrations. And that was part of the thing. So eventually, sometimes that original interest kind of dies away, but the ones that they pile on top of it in order to make it valuable become more prominent. So like our oldest, right, he's really a people manager at the end of the day, even though he sometimes loves getting back into the field himself.
Yeah, and he could actually completely switch from doing anything to do with drones and run a company, just because he's such a good people manager. And he's also gotten very good at finding the tools. He had his coder brother develop an app that made hours of work he was spending on getting all of these exact details from the photographs into something that was all in a document, an Excel spreadsheet, and they were able to give it to the customer. But just those little things where along the way, it's not only about that one interest, but you can develop the other interests, or you got to bring in those tools that really help to actually use that to bring value.
And I think that's important too, because sometimes we think, oh, this is my kid's interest, I'm going to feed this. But kids' interests change as they learn more, and adults do too. And they, I guess it's more like they evolve.
Yeah. And one thing that's nice too is that as the kids get better, they get so motivated, they're so into it, they want the next thing that will help them, the next tool, whether it's the next camera.
Yeah, they're driven by that approval. And when a lot of times, and this is what's happened, they have no interest in something that you're telling, well, this would be good, and like whatever. But when they'll bump into this, say, you know what, I would be really helpful if you could put this on video so I could repeat whatever it is that you're teaching me. And so they say, okay, I'll do that, because they're trying to serve. And then maybe they get into it and they realize, wow, this is something I really like. I'm going to take a little mini course. I think our daughter, the graphic daughter, she was complaining she'd get these little commissions. And she moved away from realistic art to cartooning, because she realized no one wanted realistic art, because they wanted cartooning to emphasize exaggerate the personality of whoever they had on the cups. But she was avoiding doing babies. And a lot of grandmas were saying, I want my young kids. And I said, why aren't you doing this? And she says, well, because all my kids look like old men. And so I says, you know what, let's do a search on the internet. And sure enough, right away, how to make your babies not look like grown men. Mm-hmm. She paid for it cash to take a course. As soon as she took that one mini course explaining, the proportion of the head and all that, so they don't look like old men, then she started accepting it.
Better at it.
But she was not driven to say, oh, I'm thinking about how this. She ran into a problem, and she wanted to say, I want to be able to take, well, with dad's encouragement, well, let's search to see if there's an answer to this. And then she paid. It was a small mini skill that she added to it. And I think this is what happens with your kids, is they're going to run into difficulties, and those obstacles are going to inform as to how they need to pivot. They can say, I embrace this obstacle, I want to learn the skill to overcome it. Or they could say, you know what, I need to move in a slightly different direction, because if I keep going down this road, I'm going to be doing an activity I really don't want to do. So you make both of those decisions.
Yeah. And another thing is that she, in this case with our daughter, as they develop, they end up paying for those
Yes.
classes and courses because they're making money on it. And so if they were to come to us and say, yeah, Mom, can you buy me a new camera? Or I need to take this course. Say, well, do you have the money for it? Well, maybe you could do a few more commissions for other people to pay for it yourself. And then they start to, so our kids who have left the home haven't had to come and ask us for money. They are making money with their own businesses, and they also don't have college debt because they're able to forge their own path. They know how to do it. They know how to pivot and how to switch things around when they need to. And Alice, can I point out Alice's comment that she's saying that it's a very biblical principle to use the gifts to bring values to other, and we're using the strategy to do that. Yeah, and Jonathan wrote a ebook, it's on our website, that is all about the Matthew 25 parable, the parable of the talents. We're all given so much, and what are you going to do? Bury it? Or are you going to invest it? Are you going to, the things that God wants us to do is to be able to use it and then repeat it and multiply it, basically. So that's what we see with the whole talent building, is instead of just having like you're born with some things, you can develop it, and you've got the tools and the talents, you've got the family who's going to support you. What are you going to do with that before you leave the home? So as parents, it's kind of our responsibility to help with that too.
Yeah, for sure. And even like in modern psychology and scientific studies, like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right at the top is given back, and so the evidence is all around that is the end game of our lives, and our hero's journey is to figure out how we can provide more value to other people, how we can serve other people. And I just love that so much. So we have a few minutes left, like 7 minutes left. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and post that in the chat on Facebook or in Zoom, and we could go there. I also had a question too. It's like, how do you help your kids find their interests? Because sometimes you get kids who are just like, boring, and then if you point out their interests, then they don't want to have those interests anymore.
Have to get creative on that one.
Well, yeah. Well, in that case, there's several answers. That depends what age they're at, honestly. Sometimes when they're younger, sometimes it could just be simply because they really don't have a vision for their abilities, right? And so it's more of an encouragement situation. And it may be, and that's why it very varies from individual to individual, including in our household. Some boys need more of the, drop and give me 10, and they love that kind of challenges. Other ones may need more of like, hey, why don't you come right along with me? Let's go try this together. So it depends the child, one. The other one is we're very aggressive in how we view talent building, because I've told them many times in the beginning when they start, this talent building is as important to me as is your schoolwork. So we would never, ever, I think most moms would probably be in that position, say, kids like, what, I'm just not into math. I think I'm just going to skip all my math classes for the rest of my teen years. And same with history. I don't like history. I just want to watch YouTube videos. And you'd be like, no, that's not an option. Maybe we can modify the curriculum, but you will be doing it. You will be doing it. A lot of times we give our kids that option to opt out of their talent building. But if you believe there's a potential in them, you need to be like the coach. You can say, you know what? I know you can do that one more mile. I've seen you. So you're going to get up. We're going to put the timer on. If you need me to get the bullhorn to say, attaboy, we're going to do that. If you need me to shout in your face, we're going to do that too.
And a couple of different things.
I don't shout it though.
Well, and a part of it too is that there have been times when they get so motivated that an opportunity comes up, but it conflicts with them, and our kids will come and say, oh, I really need to spend some more time editing this podcast. But I haven't done my math yet today. Or we actually had a good example of our oldest when he was younger. He was like, well, this guy called me and he wants me to come out and film him at the lake, and the lake is like an hour and a half away, but I won't get my schoolwork done. We're like, are you kidding? We don't care about that. Go,
yeah,
take
do your
this
schoolwork. Yep.
So you have to, if the kids see you as on their side and you're there to coach them, and that means that you have to be the tough guy too. You're not their best buddy, but you have to be the tough guy too. Then it changes things. And another thing that we've encouraged parents is that when kids feel like they're failing or they're not that good, they want to give up and just completely abandon it. we talk to the kids. Sometimes there is a time to abandon an interest, but sometimes it's just they need to push through. Maybe they need a little bit more experience with it. Maybe they got feedback from someone, they did something for somebody, they thought they're bringing such great value, and the person just like, oh, it's not really what I had in my head when I was explaining things to you. Well, if our daughter had given up on art because of that, which she did face that, we said, you know what, that's not what they were looking for. Find out what they're looking for. Now, when she does a commission for someone, she wants to see the pictures on their Instagram. So if it's like a pet, sometimes these grandmas want, drawings of their pets. So she said, can I have about 5 or 6 pictures of your pet? Can you tell me what the pet likes to do? Tell me about the personality. She knows the questions to ask in order to do a good job. And that's exactly when your kids are not perfect and they're not completely experienced, but you have the opportunity under your roof, while they're under your roof, to develop that and get them better at it. And to find those talents and find those interests, we have a workshop. We actually direct it to the kids because we want the kids to kind of trust us, first of all, to say, hey, we can show you what our kids have done. And we had our 16-year-old do a really good video of him. He loves putting the music and the beat and all this stuff. We have no clue how to do that. He knows how to do that. So he put a good video together, and that's on, if you go to parenttheirpassion.com, up at the top, to get to the workshop, there's a little purchase link, and you can find the one that's for the teen workshop. It's $27, but it'll take your kids through how to find those interests, and then the next steps, because it's not just, it has to work for the family. And I think parents will appreciate us as we do this with the kids, because they're going to want us to say, no, you don't need to do another season of this where you're going to be, we have to drive you half across the state for meets or something, if that's not the part of the big picture. If it is, we'll encourage that. But sometimes you have to think through all of the factors in that.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I love that you say you're very aggressive at talent building and helping them find those gifts and talents that spark them and light them up. And then you help them figure out how to turn it into value. And so that's also why I really appreciate that workshop that you have, because it shifts the mindset a bit from you as the parent trying to make your kids be productive, which never works super well, because you don't want to be that slave driver, versus you as the parent getting on their side and being there to support them, but they're also there to support you in the family.
Yes. So, yeah. You really get to use like if you have someone in your family that loves to cook, you're going to put that kid in charge of the family meals and coming up with, there's so many creative ways that they will enjoy working for you too, and for the family.
Yeah. And it's opened my mind up to a lot of new possibilities too. Like, as I've done a lot of these things, I've tried to do this too, where we've guided our kids into different interests and talents to provide value. But I'm like, man, there's a lot of great places I could adjust and do better.
And sometimes it's the kids that come up with the idea. A lot of times with us, it's the kids that tell us, oh, this is a lot better on this platform versus that. And sometimes we fight them a little bit on it. And other times, sometimes they're right. And then we just let them go out.
Yeah. And a lot of times we just say, I don't know. I love saying that. It's like, I don't know, because they're usually a pay grade or two above us once they start going down that road. And we'll say, go research and find out. If it's something like we're maybe a little uncomfortable with as far as how far they can take this socially or physically, we'll say, well, research it, do the research and come back. Tell me.
It's not on us.
Yeah.
They have to prove it to us. So,
yeah. And we're talking proving the very simple, like if I'm worried that they're going to cut their finger off and they're, because they're too young, then I'll say, well, I'm a little worried. And they say, well, I think there's a way to make it safer. It's like, okay, go find out what it is. And they come back, well, there's this extra tool that makes it safer. Like, okay, you have the money for it, then go get it.
It's like when they want to buy something on Amazon. We always say, look at all the reviews. I mean, don't even come and ask me to go look at the reviews for you. I don't know. You go look at the reviews and then look at the Q&A and all that. So they have to come up with an argument in a positive way that will make us say yes, but they have to do the work.
And use their money.
That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I love how you live what you teach by providing value to other moms, by sharing what you have figured out with all your trial and error. And, I think this is super valuable for parents to hear, especially like I was saying, in this day and age when it is so much about just feeding your, how do you put it? your humanly comforts sometimes and forgetting about the next step of providing value to other people and just being a good person that way. So thank you so much, and parenttheirpassion.com where we can find you. But
Yep, thank you. And again, Alice mentioning this to her husband. Get the husbands on board. I tell you, this is why he is really why we changed this up in our family, and it is hugely. Parents and husbands need to look at this for the future. Because
Yeah, dads are so important.
It's a hard.
Yeah, if your
place to
kid
get a
says,
career.
I'm really into this, talent building, moms will say they're sleeping in. Moms will say, okay, sleep in. Well, maybe moms get tough too with teen boys, but your dad can go in there. It's like, hey, you said you committed, you're going to be out there at 4, follow through. And boys want that because they're
Yeah.
growing. They need somebody to be a coach. They want the coach to wake them up because they're saying, we believe in you, but that means get your behind off the couch and out that door to go and meet that person you said you're going to meet.
yeah, that's great. That's great. We for sure need the dads and the moms combined to help our kids for
Yep.
sure. Yep. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Molly.
Bye.